Last night, I had planned, as I say, an entirely different kind of speech. I had planned to tell us all how wonderful we were, how steadfast we've been all these years, how we have proven over and over again, for as long as I can remember, that ours is the agenda that works, and that we must never, ever change our course, because we're what keeps America steady. But I gotta tell you something. I watched Keith Olbermann last night and Rachel Maddow, and my blood turned to ice. When I see the way they are selling this war in Afghanistan, I was overwhelmed by the way that Keith Olbermann just rolled over when the reporter from the Washington Post got up there and made all kinds of excuses for this war in Afghanistan. We're not really going to fight anybody. We're going to send, 22,000 troops in there. There are already 17, 4 more are going in. Just in there to train other troops, to train Afghan troops. It's really all different this time. And then I watched Rachel Maddow, who in my opinion is a real breakthrough in the media. I have to tell you, nobody comes close. Nobody comes close. This is progress, this woman. And when she showed Obama making a speech and Bush making a parallel speech, and occasionally they said the same thing on screen at the same time. Things like, we will not reverse our course, in the same rhythm. We will not leave defeated, in the same rhythm. I got this terrible, cold feeling of deja vu. And I said to myself, where is this coming from? And I decided to share with you what the last 10 presidents have done that feels so frighteningly similar to me. Which are the presidents that we remember? It appears to me that we only remember the ones that have been involved in war. How many people thought, for example, of Gerald Ford as one of our great presidents? Nobody, right? Completely forgettable. How about Jimmy Carter? I know he's great now. I know he's great now. But just remember, he only lasted for 1 term. Which are the presidents that have lasted? Every single one of them is a war president. And this cannot have escaped Barack Obama. It certainly didn't escape Bush. So let's go through some of these presidents. Roosevelt had World War II, and we continue to believe, and I'm one of the people who does continue to believe, that by the time World War II occurred, we could not escape it. Truman had Korea. Eisenhower sent the first 1,500 troops into Vietnam. Let's never forget that. We love him for saying, beware of the industrial military complex. But the bottom line is that he was a general, he was a man of war, and he sent the first 1,500 troops into Vietnam. And what did he call them? The same thing Obama is calling the people, the 4,000 that he's sending in. He called them advisors. The first 1,500 troops that went into Vietnam was sent in by Eisenhower in his last days in office, and he called them advisors. And then Kennedy increased that 1,500 to 15,000. And then Johnson increased it to 60,000. And Nixon increased it to God knows how many and killed 3 million Cambodians to the bargain. And then, of course, there was Gerald Ford, the forgotten man, the man who wasn't even asked to speak at Republican conventions. And Gerald Ford, I looked him up, I've become very fond of Gerald Ford in one evening. He spoke consistently against war. And then there was Jimmy Carter, who I kept trying to think of what he was involved in. He was involved in the fact that American diplomats were held hostage in Iran, if you remember. Remember? all of that. And then there was Reagan, who was responsible for Iran-Contra, for Grenada, for helping the Contras in Nicaragua. The United States was up to its ears in war under Reagan. And then, of course, there was George Bush I, and we all remember the Iraq Gulf War. And then there was Clinton with Kosovo and the bombings of Iraq. And I found out that 7,500 Americans were killed in all of the little wars that Clinton was responsible for. And now we have Obama, who's using the same language. We're just going in there to train them. They're just going to be advisors. And it seems to me that as progressives, we have to narrow our agenda. And I believe that it should consist of three main efforts. The first effort is that we cannot support war as a means of solving problems. Dennis Kucinich told me that he would like to support the budget. And he said he cannot support this budget because there is a tremendous amount of money in the budget to wage war on Afghanistan and to continue to wage war in Iraq. $120 billion is in the budget for that purpose. And this is above and beyond the defense budget. And we have to make the decision as grassroots progressives, do we support this budget, which does in fact guarantee jobs, does in fact help the economy, does in fact help the infrastructure? Are we willing to have that blood on our hands? This is not an easy subject, but it is a subject that we have got to confront. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to hand our economy over to the United States Treasury and insist that they accept it. We have to either get rid of the Federal Reserve, which Ron Paul, by the way, he already has a bill in there to do exactly that, or we have to follow Dennis Kucinich and nationalize the Federal Reserve. And I believe that our third effort should be to stop the privatization of all of our social programs. In our own state, we have a governor who really doesn't like public schools. This Monday on my show, Steve Zimmer talks about that. He feels if it's up to Schwarzenegger with this draconian budget that he and the Republicans have forced through, we are going to lose a tremendous number of our social programs. And one of them is going to be our public schools. And I feel that those are the three major agenda items that we as progressives must address. So my friends, it's a great moment for me to be able to talk to you. And the timing actually is perfect, because from this moment forward, let's make it very clear to Barack Obama that we are not behind him in pursuing this war in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.